Poverty is a situation, and we have fully the means and the resources to work our way out of poverty. The conversation should be, what are the things we need to do to work our way out of that situation? And I'll offer you a very quick thought. Get on a plane leaving any part of Nigeria, flying to the Middle East, and see the number of wealthy Nigerians flying to the Middle East to spend their wealth. Then do the inverse. Get on a plane from any part of the Middle East flying to Nigeria and see the number of wealthy Middle Easterns coming to spend their money here. And that's the answer that you need. So to call the problem, label the problem, and diagnose the problem is to recognize that a big part of the problem is our mindset. It's where we are planting our talents, our skills, and resources. It answers your question in this way. If we, any of us in this room, are capable, gifted, resourced, and doing well, and you're not planting a seed in the next generation, investment is not just putting up buildings, it's also pulling up people.
That's right. Did you hear
Right?
that?
And so I take heart what Jeff has done here, and him being here, and the board being here, because there is a recognition that you pull up a people. This is, I think it's the most important fundamental point Africans actually need to understand. Not only what Jeff said, that there is no they, but also that the they is us. And that each of us has a responsibility to pull up the next generation, to do for the next generation. And if we don't do that, we can talk shop about it, speak about it, PowerPoint about it, discuss about it. We can put together business plans about it. But it takes actual intention and effort in doing the work. The challenge Africans have is we don't see ourselves. We don't see ourselves. And when we do, we don't see excellence. I'm going to give you a very controversial example. The Americans will tell you that the United States is the greatest country in the world. Ask them, what is that based on? Give me any metadata that supports that notion. And you'll recognize 3 or 4 paragraphs into the conversation that metadata doesn't exist. Which is to say, all of us in the world have accepted the United States to be the greatest country in the world, not because it is, but because the people believe it to be so. This is why this is why I was talking about Adam calling things. What you call things matters. Stop saying Nigeria is the most corrupt country in the world. If you call it, it will be. If you say we are poor, if you call it, it will be. This is the universal law of how we make things manifest. So for me, the reason I travel the continent, the reason I connect with the diaspora, the reason we build businesses and finance businesses and invest in businesses and back startup, coach startups all over the continent, all over the diaspora, is because the most important thing that drives me has been God showing me that my job is to show black people that you have a place on the stage and it's not behind the house. So that's my calling. There'll be a separate person whose calling is to teach that to women. And for all of us, all I'm saying is wherever you are called, occupy that space. I mean, I must tell you very quickly, and I'm cognizant of time, you know, and I'm sure you know this. When you're an African and who succeeds, and you succeed, believe me, you don't need white haters. Africans will show you. Africans are plenty capable of hating on Africans. Now here's the crazy thing. They hate on you when you succeed, they're quiet when you fail. Which is to say that we have internalized failure so much that success is an outlier. So when you're a success, they start looking at things that make you different. You just said, I was Vusi 15 years ago. Listen, I'm 39. I was Vusi 39 years ago. Right? But I was raised by an incredible group of parents. My mom and dad were unbelievable. My father was a sensei in the dojo, introduced me into Kyokushinkai martial arts when I was 6 years old. And until he was murdered at 13, I spent 4 days a week, every single week with my dad in the dojo. So you don't need to teach me about discipline. I was raised in it. When my father passed away, my father's brothers tried to get my mother to marry the brothers, and I saw my mother become the most incredible, resilient, powerful woman. That's how I learned the power of black women. This is what a lot of people don't understand. We talk about Africa, we talk about the macro data, the population growth, the economic growth. The truth is that the backbone of this continent we call home has been black women. That's the truth of it. The generations that are raised, the languages that are taught, the cultures that are immersed, the food that we cook, the things we call home. The reason you can be in Europe and feel like it's not home is because your black mother is not there. And so for whatever reason, we've not afforded black women that space. And with the greatest of respect, black women who've been afforded that space apologize for being in the room. Be in the room.
Yeah.
Take up the room, occupy the space. It's not your job to make the people who find you foreign feel comfortable for you being in the room. Your job is to be in the room. And whatever it takes for the rest of us to cope, the universe will catch up. So the reason, by God's grace, I have been able to be at the, and I say by God's grace because I recognize my position is not what's permanent. God can take it away tomorrow. But I will serve him no matter where I am. Good or bad, money, no money, opportunities, no opportunities, stage, no stage, I will serve a living God anyway. The reason I'm saying these things is simply this. If nothing else, just have a look in the mirror. Black people, we are beautiful, we are powerful, we are all of those things. And especially Africans. And it's so important for us not only to say the things we are, but to see it in each other. So that when we see excellence, when we see success, it's not an outlier, it's an expectation. Lastly, you said you met me 14 years ago, I'm still here. And then I said to you, I haven't even started. The reason that is because when my mother was raising me, my mom had this like very simple expression for all of us in the household. My mother always used to say, in this house, excellence is not an expectation, it's the standard.
Yes, that's it.
So you don't get to be excellent and get an award for it. You're excellent and that's the standard. And I think if all of us hold each other to that standard, could you imagine what that would create? The rising tides elevating all ships, what we might all become and what might be made manifest. The generation that birthed the Africa we had liberated us from a physical colony. This generation must liberate us from our mental slavery. But we can't do it if we don't speak life into each other, if we don't call each other, and if we don't bring each other into something greater. That's why I said, I don't need Nigeria to fail for South Africa to do well. I want every single one of my Nigerian brothers and sisters to do well. Because your success is my success. Because guess what? To the rest of the world, that's how they see us, eh? If you land in another part of the world and you tell them you are from Africa, they don't care where in Africa. Africa is Africa, is Africa, is Africa. Of course, we know there's South Africa, then there's everybody else. But the point is, to them, Africa, no, it's true. No, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to put your hands together for that? Please do so, especially for the women in the room. He spoke to you. And if you, the ladies, put your hands together for Vusi, please. Now we're not done, we're not done. This particular question, I'm going to bend to ask you. Drink some water because it's serious. Yeah, Vusi, it's a very, very sincere question. And we want a very, very sincere answer. Many heard what you said, and for them, you look like Superman, or you perhaps sound like Superman. But I want to ask you this, Vusi. This is a 3-in-1 question, and I want you to answer it in the sequence that I asked it. Vusi, in your entrepreneurial journey, in your business journey, have you cried before? What made you cry? And what wiped your tears away?
Is it me or should he have like a podcast? Like, Oprah didn't die, she multiplied. Look at you. Well, didn't die on TV is what I meant. Yeah, I've had many of those moments. I'm trying to think of.
Take your time.
So, some time ago, I had some people working for me who were very close to me in the sense that I'm sorry, can I take a segue? For those of us who are believers, you know that in the good book, there is the 72 that Christ sent to open up new territories. There is the 12 who were his disciples. But there is the 3 with whom he ascended, who got to see Christ be godlike. You all know what I'm talking about. And so when this is my model and how I build my businesses. I have my 72, my 12, and 3. My 72 understand the vision and are strong enough on the vision to go and execute it. They don't need to like the vision bearer. They just get the vision. The 12 not only understand the vision, but they also have to be approximate to the vision bearer. In other words, the 12 have proximity to you. The 3 not only understand the vision and the vision bearer, but they also have access to the vision bearer. So they get to see the vision bearer most vulnerable and strongest. The mistake I think a lot of us make earlier on in our journeys is we don't know how to differentiate between these. And so you think about people in their line functions. This is my head of finance, head of HR, head of marketing, head of X, Y, and Z, when actually people carry with them a particular spirit. And you can have the wrong spirit doing the right job, and then it gets destroyed. So there was a time in particular we were just about to scale our venture business, our venture finance business. And I had 2 people in that business who I trusted with my life. And then I grew to learn that they were stealing from me. But I didn't just grow to learn that they were stealing from me, it was that they were stealing from me when we were going through our hardest time. Now listen, human beings are human beings, right? But there is something insidious about me taking food from the table when you're barely eating yourself. This was at the time. We went through just over 2 years where I didn't pay myself a salary. This was at that time. And at that time, they were stealing. And not just stealing a little bit of money, I'm talking millions on millions on millions. The hardest thing was, these people weren't just in my business, they were family. So now you go through a million different calculations. Is it me? Is it how I manage this business? Is it how I've managed them? Is it how I've created this environment? Is it and the technical you, the trained you, the Vusi that has an MBA, how do you know somebody has an MBA? They'll tell you. The Vusi that has an MBA is going through, we've got the risk processes and the how did we miss this? But the human being in you is still going, excuse my language, shit. How do you steal from me when you know I'm barely managing to make payment for my kids' school fees? How do you steal when that happens? I gave up in that business over a period of 2 months, probably about 10 times. And when I say gave up, I mean I gave up. But there was always this voice at the back of my head that said, just go tomorrow and try again. Just tomorrow. So this is a very specific incident actually. I remember I had one specific incident. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting in the office. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm looking at all this information. I've got my risk people telling me that this is actually a case of fraud. You should be opening a case. Then there's the back of my head that goes, but if I open a case, it carries also many other implications that I've got to explain to family, I've got to explain to partners, I've got to explain. It's a disaster. It's a mess. So if I do it, there is a mess. If I don't do it, I let them get away with the mess. Right? It was a Wednesday afternoon and I just left. It was like 11 o'clock. I left and I remember, I went to the gym, then I went home. My trick has always been this. Just show up tomorrow. That's it. There's no rocket science. Like, just show up tomorrow, 7:30, and try one more day. Just one more day. One more day. And so all I kept doing was one more day, then one more day, and then one more day. There are some of you who followed me here for long enough to know that I've not always professed my belief in my Lord and Savior. It was that time that brought me close to God. Because there is something about how God uses isolation to create elevation. And so when you're isolated from the world, you can hear his voice a bit better. And then you realize God was always talking to you, you just weren't tuned in. Does that make sense? For those of us in the room who are old enough, you remember when I was growing up, the TV had the thing used to turn the dial to get the frequency. I realized at that time God's frequency was always there. Vusi wasn't tuned in. Here's why I wasn't tuned in. Because the magazines were putting me on covers. It's so cool, right? Because you're tuned into that frequency. The magazines were putting me on covers. My garage had a fleet of supercars. Ladies love me. I'm on my cool J. Never mind, I'm Zulu, it's not my fault. But I learned at that time in my season of isolation that if I serve man, I will always be disappointed. I've got to serve something greater. So what wiped my tears was the recognition that I'm not called here to wear a good suit or speak good English or be wealthy. I'm called on for something a lot more intentional than that. And once I plugged into that, that's been my fire. Now the crazy thing, and I will close, is this. The crazy thing is, the more God has elevated me, the more people the enemy has sent after me. The great thing is because I know victory is certain, I don't care what the process looks like. So in fact, I'll say it a different way. I look for the enemy's people to attack me because now I know I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
Because if they're not attacking me, it means I'm not moving in the right path. In South Africa, we have this bird, I think you guys might have it here, it's called a hadida. But it's a specific kind of bird. And one of the things this bird does is it lays an egg in the ground, right? And when you walk towards where it lays an egg, it'll run in the other direction and make a noise at you. Basically, it'll push you in a different direction to distract you so that you don't move in the direction of where the eggs are. Yeah, faith is exactly like this. When the enemy's making a noise, he's trying to pull you in a different direction. But the wisdom has got to be staying still and going in the direction you were going anyway, because that's where the blessing has been. So yeah, man, look, for me, and you know when you cry, entrepreneurs, we don't just cry tears, ne? We cry everything. You cry tears, then you cry biblical verses, then you cry. Have you ever cried a logo? Like, have you ever cried so much you go and change the logo because you're convinced if you change the logo, stuff's going to be different? Entrepreneurs know what I'm talking about. Like, have you ever cried a website domain? You're like, maybe my domain is wrong. Maybe it must be vusi.ai. This .com is a problem. Because that's what we do, right? So when we cry, what we also do in our crying is we cry in like many different ways. So you start going, what is it? And what I have learned is this: peace be still.
Yeah.
You're crying and you're in your season because God is using your tears to fertilize your ground. Just stay in it, be still, keep going. You're gonna make it. If you weren't making it, the enemy wouldn't be shouting at you, so you're good, keep going.